J-Tech Studios in Atlanta, Georgia. It's America's favorite game show podcast. Tell them what they've won. And now, here are your hosts, Tom Bastek and Mike Jacobs.
Hello and welcome in. It's America's favorite game show podcast. Tell them what they've won. It's the Game Show Guys, and I'm Tom Bastek.
And I am Mike Jacobs. Thanks for everyone who joined us last week, and apologies for those who maybe joined us a bit too early last week.
No, that's not it. I made the mistake. I'm proud that they caught it because they listened so quickly.
Well, that's true. That's true. Yes. So thank you for being quick and fanful listeners. But we did leave a segment in that was not meant to be part of the show.
Yeah, it was just I put into the final edit. Well, we had done the edit, but I uploaded the unedited version of segment 3. That's all it was.
Gotcha.
So when I looked back on it, I'm like, I don't see anything wrong. And then I'm like, oh, yeah, I do, because one's the final and one's not the final, and I uploaded the one that was not the final. So
yeah, that final, that's a pretty important qualifier.
It's just what it is. You know what? I'm only human. That's all I can say. All right, but that's all we really got. We got one more episode, Mike. Next week is our 40th, right?
Yeah, indeed. We are going Video Game Spectacular next week.
Going to be a lot of fun. I definitely want to talk about, and we'll talk more about this off the air, but I definitely want to talk about our favorite video game shows. Whether it's like Anticipation, which was like a game show made for it, or a game show like The Price is Right on a video game. You know what I'm saying?
Yes. I was actually a very big fan of Price is Right on Commodore 64. I used to play that with my grandmother a lot when I was a little kid.
Wow, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's the kind of stuff that we're going to talk about next week. It'll probably be a pretty big episode because we've got, 2 or 3 different shows?
I think we've got 3 television shows, and then we haven't even talked about the game show aspect of it yet. So
sure.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot to talk about.
Yeah, it'll be great. That's all next week. If you didn't listen last week, you missed out on a very special Stump or Chump.
The first successful stumping, possibly even the last.
It could be. I mean, in all fairness, we're having to grasp at straws to ask questions that are so outlandish that literally, I wouldn't expect him to get it, and I'd also not feel fair asking it.
Well, I don't necessarily feel unfair asking it, but I do agree I don't expect him to get it, and I think that is a compliment to him in that we have to go so off-kilter with the questions in order to even come close.
Well, we'll find out again here momentarily. This week, Mike, the featured game show is The Amazing Race.
Yeah, not for me, but I will say the closest I've ever gotten to enjoying a reality show.
Yeah, this definitely, when we talk about, reality competition show, this is one of the few reality shows that truly has competition.
I definitely agree. I like the gameplay here. I'm not a big fan of the reality show aspect of it.
Yeah.
But there's a lot here, and,
I can't wait to unpack it all.
I'm not going to poo-poo it. I put this show, and I think I've said this exact phrase on the show before, that I put this show in the same category as Grateful Dead, in that I recognize what people enjoy about it, but I do not enjoy it myself.
Yeah, I think Fear Factor was the last time that we both agreed on that.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's kind of, the same, at least, genre show.
Yeah. Same sort of thing. Absolutely. All right. Well, with that being said, let's see if we can stump the chump and get our news plus This Week in Game Show History. Let's go to Christian.
Yeah, buddy.
Light up your cigarette, crack open a beer, put the kiddos to bed. From chaos around the world to carnage in your burial front yard, it's time for the news.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Mike. This is the news brought to you by BuzzerBlog.com. I tend to talk about what's going on across the pond in the UK when it comes to game shows because there's always a good chance that we're going to see American adaptations of all these new shows at some point in the near or maybe even distant future. So I'll I'll make mention of this. ITV is working on a new game show called The Void, and the way they describe it is this: a brand new, high-octane game show that sees contestants put themselves to the test to take on a wide range of demanding mental and physical challenges, all while dangling at terrifying heights over the void. So that's what we got. It sounds like the Cube over the Grand Canyon.
Well, when you said the void, like that, what you described is what came to my head with the thought of like, well, okay, that's what it's not going to be. So what is it? And it actually is. It sounds
exactly
terrifying.
Yeah, it does. And it sounds interesting. And if I know anything about the shows in the UK, especially what's come out over the past few years, their production values are always on point. So I'm excited to see what they do with this. And again, anything that happens over there is fair game for America, especially around now when we're thinking about unscripted series and, programming choices that are less expensive than dramas or scripted things. So who knows? We might see The Void at some point in the future.
I went the total opposite way of that, Mike. When he said the void, all I could think of was the Noid. Remember
Oh,
the Noid?
God, yeah.
And I was like, you're dangling over a Noid.
Or you're dangling over a hot pizza.
Yeah, maybe.
That's me after we finish recording this.
There it is. Ba-dum-bum. All right, Christian, what else you got for us?
Well, we also have NBC picking up 10 episodes of Family Game Fight. So we know Family Game Night, hosted by Jane Lynch. Family Game Fight, hosted by Kristen Bell and Dax Shepard. 10 episodes, and they are casting now. They're looking for families in the Southern California area. It seems like the games will be similar to what we've seen on Family Game Night. They may be a little simplified or maybe a little more silly, considering there are going to be kids involved and things like that. But we have Family Game Night, and now we have Family Game Fight.
So is the idea that with Family Game Fight that they're playing games that, induce fighting? Like they got to play Monopoly and categories or something?
We can only hope.
I love how you think categories. Now, I definitely see how Monopoly induces fights, but how does categories induce fights?
Oh, every single
categories
time.
induces so many fights.
That is
Never.
I would say that is the most fight-worthy game maybe of all time.
No, in my household, I just always win, so there's never a fight.
Well, see, we need to play because I would beat you for sure. But either way, the thing is, people always try and pass off like half answers, or they try and stretch it into a double letter because that's extra points, right? Like if you did lazy llamas or something. But my brother would do like for terms of endearment, he would do lazy llamas, and he's like, "Yeah, I call my wife lazy llama all the time." It's like, what are you talking about?
Well, how can you prove that? Right, that's genius.
Yeah.
He's like the Bobby Fischer of categories.
I guess I kind of see it as the jerk of categories, but what are you going to do?
I see it as don't blame the player, blame the game. Sorry, guys.
All right, let me hit you with one. So one of the categories is states, and the letter was C. And my wife and I got into an argument because I wrote confusion. Right.
Yeah,
I would
absolutely.
Accept that.
I would accept that too.
Right.
Absolutely.
And that's what I thought. She wrote Colorado.
Of course she did.
Of course she did, because she's a rational human being.
Oh, God. Yeah, and we're all the creative types over here going, yeah, confusion, absolutely, that's right.
But that is the exact kind of answer that would start a fight in my family, because my sister would be like, no, you know what they're talking about.
You're right.
The worst, this doesn't need to make it air if you don't want to, but the worst, this is a very contentious point. Whenever we play Scrabble or Bananagrams, my brother will always say I'm not allowed to play certain words because of how I learned them. And it's like, why does the source of the knowledge negate the fact that you know it?
Yeah, this is why I don't like Scrabble, though, Mike. You and I have had this conversation.
You're right.
Is because if you learn there's 24 different words that start with a letter Z or whatever, so that you could play this game better. That's great, and I love you for it. But that's why I don't like the game. Like, it doesn't put everybody on an equal playing field necessarily.
Well, I don't think any game puts everybody on an equal playing field.
Sure, it does.
You're saying that if you go up against a pro basketball player, you're going to have an equal field as them?
Different than a board game.
There's still skill and strategy and all that kind of stuff.
I guess, I guess one of the things is like, if you're going to trivia and it's general knowledge, it's hard to like over prep for that. But when you go to like, you go to trivia and it's Harry Potter trivia. Okay, there is a way to over prep for that. You know?
Well, you know what? I think to your point, the world Scrabble champion in the French language does not speak a word of French.
There you go.
He's just memorized the French dictionary and can play the game really well.
Oh yeah,
Good
that
for
is the
him.
smuggest guy I've ever seen in my life. I saw a picture of him like, with his trophy, and he knows. He knows.
Yeah, he knows.
That's hilarious. That's absolutely hilarious. Well, see, there's another tidbit of knowledge that you get. It's great.
Always learning
All right.
something new.
All right, Christian, you got anything else for us?
Well, I was going to mention this a couple days ago on The Price is Right. See, I've been home all week, so I've been watching The Price is Right. Did you guys happen to see one of the showcases a couple days ago was like incredibly painful? I don't know if you guys have seen this. Okay, so there was a contestant named Jennifer, and she was bidding on her showcase at the end of the show. So, and this was on March 3rd. So her showcase was a video camera, was a home theater system, and a Nissan Versa. So that was her thing, and she was bidding on it. Her bid was $23,294, and of course the goal is to get to the actual retail price as close as you can without going over.
Sure.
$23,294. Her price of her showcase was $23,291. She overbid by $3, and it was
my
the most
God.
painful thing I have seen.
You got to wonder why she thought that for, right? Like,
Yeah.
Incredible. Like either she knew the prices and she just like forgot to carry a one, or she
That's
just
what
got
I'm
incredibly lucky and like tried to guess it. You know what I mean? But
yeah.
Yeah, see,
Wow.
1 or 4 are both not like numbers that I would bid like, $72.99, or whatever.
Exactly, or 0 or 5.
Or 0, yeah, exactly right. But 1 and 4 are both not like normal numbers. While we're on the subject of this, has anybody noticed that like the change in the scenery is now very post-millionaire of Prices Right?
well, they redid all their staging for COVID, and I'm not a fan of it at all.
It's so millionaire-esque. It's
Yeah.
that dark blue, Thank you, Mike. Thank you for that. Thank you.
Well, it's not that I dislike it. I mean, I would say blue is one of my favorite colors, especially when paired with black and white. I think it's a great, aesthetic. But you just see it so much, and The Price is Right was like one of the last holdouts of the, that orange and brown and yellow scheme. That I mean, I just absolutely love that color scheme and the '70s feel of it. So to hear that, I haven't seen it in a while, but to hear that The Price is Right has ditched that for a dark brooding blue is not great news to me.
Again, I honestly feel like the colors, and Mike and I have had this conversation, Christian, about the colors in game shows reflect where we are as a society. In other words, after 9/11, like everything had to be dark and drama, and everything went to that. And we were, right now with COVID, I can understand like everybody's feeling dark and brooding again. And here we go with dark colors again now with Price is Right even.
Right, and you should think that, a show like The Price is Right is an escape from all of that for a little while. So you
Correct.
would think that that's where you'd go to, like, get your daily dose of colors. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. On that topic, I have recently. So when Apple introduced the like dark mode for their computer, I enabled it on everything, and I've just been running dark, and it's so much easier on the eyes. But
Right.
I recently changed back to a light color scheme and changed all my colors from like dark colors to brighter colors, and it has improved my workday immensely.
Really?
There is a lot to the idea of color therapy and brightness, and like I don't feel like I'm a glooming, hidden in a dark dungeon. Instead of it's like bright and cheery, and I don't know. It does a lot to help improve morale during the workday.
Now, I wouldn't be surprised if once we're through this COVID thing and things start to look a little brighter, if maybe you start to see game shows go towards more of a brighter, kind of feel to it.
I sure hope so.
All right, Christian, what about this week in game show history?
Well, this week in game show history, we are going back to March 14th, 2010.
Happy birthday to my sister.
Oh, cool.
nice.
Happy birthday.
Oh, she's only 11 years old?
Well, no. Okay, fine.
Well, Happy birthday to Mike's sister, and also happy birthday to Minute to Win It. That premiered on March 14th, 2010 on NBC. Really popular stunt show. And, it was the first time that a show like that had been done for a lot of money. You always had shows like Beat the Clock and Double Dare and stuff that did sort of silly physical games for, small prizes, a little bit of money. Minute to Win It, the grand prize on the NBC version was $1 million.
Woo.
And contestants won it by participating in these little games, and their hook was that they were all games that could be played using simple household items. So it brought about this kind of short-lived craze where people were playing the games and uploading them to YouTube. And NBC even had their own website for a while where you could upload videos of you playing all the games, and they would give you all the descriptions and what you needed for them, and also you could practice for the show using stuff you had around the house. So it was it was a really great hook, and it got people really involved in the show. Guy Fieri from Food Network, of course, was the host, and I thought he did a great job. But the games themselves were really the star. So I have a couple of descriptions of some of the games they used to play, if you guys
Sure.
care to hear them. So
Absolutely.
Yeah.
and these were some of the ones that were available on the website as well that you could practice for the show with. So one of them was called Don't Blow the Joker. So, and I swear to God, it's the name of the game. So, a deck of cards is placed on top of a bottle. The contestant must blow the entire deck off the bottle except for the bottom card, the Joker.
I like that.
And
Okay. Mike, these are good ones that we need to remember for your next Mario Party.
I was going to bring that up at the end when he was done. That show is easily one of the biggest inspirations and sources of games for Mario Party for sure.
Nice.
Here's one called Nut Stacker. So, with a series of metal nuts placed upon a chopstick on their hand, contestants must stack the nuts one at a time to form a freestanding tower.
Okay.
And we got one called here's one. Here's called Buckethead. In Buckethead, contestants must ricochet ping pong balls from the floor to a wall and into a bucket on top of their head. $1 million for beating these games. It was the first time it had been done ever in game show history, and it happened this week.
Amazing.
It's fantastic. All right. It is time for Stump or Chump.
Oh, are we doing that this week? Damn it. Okay.
Oh, yeah, sorry, Christian. Well, here's the thing. Mike wanted to kill the segment because we finally won. And then I said it wouldn't be fair to Christian because he needs to redeem
He needs to
himself.
redeem himself.
Please give me a chance to run it back. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So this week we are bringing one from the vaults. There was one I had a couple weeks ago that I wanted to ask, and I could not remember the answer. And then when I went to go find it, I could not, and therefore it was lost to time until it has resurfaced recently. So I'm going back to this one.
Okay.
And so we're talking Sale of the Century from a couple weeks ago.
Nice.
It got a revival at one point, but it got a different name when it was revived. I believe the year was 2007. So if you could tell me, yes, confirmed. You could tell me what Sale of the Century was renamed to for the 2007 reboot.
Well, I remember this show. And I remember how excited I was that Sale of the Century was coming back. And I remember that it did have a new title. And the title of the show was Temptation. That was the name of the show. And now that name, Temptation, has a bit of a history. It was referred to as Temptation in Australia. And then years and years prior, back in the 70s, and I even think this was in black and white in Australia, there was a show called The $25,000 Great Temptation. And it was essentially Sale of the Century, the way we know it now in the 80s, but a decade prior. And I think what happened was they didn't have the proper rights to the format, so they kind of played a knockoff version of it, again, called The $25,000 Great Temptation. But yeah, I remember Temptation, and I'm pretty sure that's the answer. Hosted by Rossi Morreale, who was an airhead and didn't do a great job at all, but...
Yep. You got it.
Well, there it is.
I had a feeling that one wouldn't be too difficult, but the submitter of the question was pretty certain that you didn't know about that version. So there you go.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go.
How
There
can
it
a
is.
submitter of a question be certain I don't know anything?
Well,
except
I
for
know,
that-
right?
Except for that thing I got asked last week.
Well, that was me, though, not a submitter. So
That's right. That's right.
Well, Christian, you've now redeemed yourself. Mike, you could officially kill the segment if you'd like, but personally, I get so much great feedback about Christian's knowledge from these questions that I really would prefer not to kill it.
I mean, I'm going to be perfectly honest. I'm pretty sure people only listen to the show for Christian, so there you go.
That's ridiculous.
Ridiculous or not, we've gotten a lot of, hey, if it wasn't for Christian, we probably wouldn't listen to the show.
I don't think they phrase it quite like that. But,
Well,
well, no, it's more along the lines of we're glad you're giving more Christian more time and things like that.
yeah, I can read between the lines, though. It's basically screw you, Mike and Tom, we love Christian.
Well, thank you to everybody who listens, no matter who's on the show.
All right. Well, okay. So let's see. This week we are featuring The Amazing Race.
I gotta tell you, I've never been a huge fan of The Amazing Race. I get the idea, and I get how it has appeal for lots of people who like those types of reality shows. And to be a contestant on it kind of seems like a dream come true. You get to travel around the world and play games and be on TV. It's never one that held great fascination for me. But again, I do get the appeal. I forget if it was The Amazing Race or not. I'm pretty sure it was. But there was one game where they were shooting watermelons off of catapults.
Oh my God, I've seen this clip.
You
I didn't know
remember
that's
this
what
video?
I didn't know this is what it was from.
I feel like it was. There's a video of a girl shooting a watermelon with a catapult, and she pulls it backwards, and or something happens where it goes forward and then ricochets back, and she gets a watermelon to the face,
Like point blank range, just like
Yeah.
she had to have broken her nose. Like, I'm surprised she didn't die, to be perfectly honest with you. It is brutal.
Yeah, it looked like her head exploded, but it
Right?
was just the watermelon.
Right.
It was the watermelon meat all around her face. And I remember the video at the end, it was like her teammate says something like, "You have to finish the game." And she was like, "I just got a watermelon in the face."
On a related note, I'm uncomfortable with the term watermelon meat.
I'm sorry. Well, you got the rind and you got the meat.
No, I
Oh
understand.
my God. I just watched it, and oh, God.
Wait, I want to watch it now, too. Hold on.
Oh, just look up watermelon catapult fail. That's all you need. Yeah. Woo.
It was The Amazing Race.
Great.
And I don't know how she's not dead.
Wait, hold on.
That guy. Don't give up on me now, please.
Wait, here it
Just
comes.
focus.
Here it
Oh my
comes.
God, I'm just getting frustrated.
Here it comes. Oh, my God. It gets better every time.
Well, we're going to go ahead and post that one up on the website for
Yeah.
sure for this week. And it's been an eventful news this week again, Mike.
Oh, sorry, I just watched it too. Like, the angle is incredible. Like, I don't know much about physics, but like the chances of that happening so precisely.
Yeah.
What must that feel like?
Hey, Christian, if you want to come down, I'll be more than happy to build a catapult and shoot one into your face.
There we go. There's some bonus footage.
And I got a feeling people are going to pay good money to see that, too.
Oh, yeah. I hope so. They better.
Whoo! All right, well, it's been a very eventful news. Christian, how about a plug for BuzzerBlog?
Of course, BuzzerBlog.com, the #1 game show website in the world. Whether you're looking for information on new series, returning series, casting, watermelons, whether you're an industry insider, a casual game show fan, or diehard fans like me, Tom, and Mike, BuzzerBlog.com is the place to go. Thank you very much.
Your source for all your watermelon and meat within needs.
That's right. We give you the meat of the watermelon.
All right, if you'd like to stump or chump, just submit a question in through either social media or send us an email via the website at tellthemwhatthey'vewon.com.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, Mike, let's take a break. When we come back, we'll handle the gameplay.
Sounds good. You've been listening to America's favorite game show podcast, Tell Them What They've Won.
There it is, the intro to The Amazing Race, this week's featured show on America's favorite game show podcast, Tell Them What They've Won. Mike, it's time for gameplay.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the gameplay is kind of short, despite it being a fairly in-depth game overall. The elevator pitch here is basically the movie It's a Mad, 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 Mad World made into a competition show. If you're not familiar with that movie, maybe the more recent Rat Race or that episode of The Simpsons. But the idea is you got 11 teams typically with 2 team members each. And they are on a race around the world to win $1 million. There were some interesting things about the team setup, which it was weird to me how specific they were that the team members must have a pre-existing relationship.
I think it's because they have to room them together and whatnot. Do you know what I'm saying? Like there was some blind date ones that were done where they actually didn't room them together, but everybody else, I think it's about saving money on hotel rooms and things.
That makes sense. I didn't really think about that, because he's going to want to stay with some creepy stranger overnight. Good call.
Well, I mean that's the whole blind date thing. Like I don't know how often they did the blind date thing, but they would take 2 people who didn't know each other and they team them up, but they didn't actually have to sleep with each other.
And there have been not several, but at least a couple different like remixes on that format, and apparently each time they tried it, it just bombed. Nobody ever wants this format to change, so it seems. And it's also interesting that they specifically are not allowed to have any relationships with other team members. And I guess that's just to sort of prevent collusion and things like that.
Sure.
You know, if you got me on one team and my brother on another team, then we're probably going to work together to make sure that we're in the finals or something.
Right.
So how do you get to the finals? Well, there's 12 legs of the race, each ending in what they call a pit stop. And the basic idea is you just start in one location for the leg of the race, and the pit stop is in another location somewhere in the world. You start in Hawaii, and the first pit stop's in London, for example. And basically what happens is they get a like clue, or sometimes it's just a straight up, here's a plane ticket and where you got to go. But they have to get there, right? The show is funding the flight there, but the means of getting the flight and paying for it, the contestant is paying for it with a company credit card. They are doing all the legwork themselves to complete this race, which also means that they're allowed to do pretty much whatever they can to make things go faster, right? They can ask for help from locals in towns for directions or things like that. But if they are doing anything, I think pretty much anything other than like the plane ticket, it does come out of their own money. So they themselves are trying to do this in as inexpensive a way as possible so that when they win, they get to keep all that money. Because during the leg of the race, there are, they can find these markers, right? And usually it's a clue or some sort of task, an extra little thing somebody has to do. And there's a number of these different tasks, such as detours, roadblocks, intersections, yield. You kind of get the idea that they're going for with the names of these things.
It's a race, that's why.
Yeah, exactly. And so basically they are little challenges that they have to do in order to successfully complete that leg of the race, or maybe earn a little bit of extra money or something like that. Some examples are like, if there's a detour, the team has 2 tasks that they're presented with, and they have to choose which one that they think is going to be faster, right, to take less time. Roadblocks is where only one member of the team is competing, and the other one just kind of has to stand by and wait. There's one cool one that is a yield where it's the first person to get it has to leave the yield for another team, and they can like leave a picture of the team they want, and then when the team gets to that yield, they have to stay there for like a predetermined amount of time. There's like a little hourglass they have to turn over and just not do anything for that time, obviously slowing things down quite a bit. And so that's the idea here, right? You are trying to impede your opponents as much as possible while speeding through your stuff as quickly as possible. The first person to reach each pit stop is awarded, a prize, typically either cash for their future legs of the trip, or some sort of what do you call it? Product placement sponsorship prize, which is a very, very big thing for this show, as we'll talk later about. And typically the last team to reach the pit stop is eliminated. And much like with any other, reality game show, you are looking to knock people out, and, then the next game continues with that one less team, which you've mentioned in the past that it's it's a bummer when they just knock people off the show without winning anything, and that is very much what happens here, especially if you are the loser of the first one. From what I read, there was a season, maybe at least there might have been more, where it was like the last person to arrive at the airport didn't even get to do the first leg of the race. And
Wow.
It's like, God, imagine how hyped you would be to get on this show and do all the preparing, and then you're done within 20 hours. Like, what a bummer.
Yeah, I did read something that said that they do give all of as a consolation prize to all the teams about $1,500. So I think that at least covers them, for like the first day or whatever.
Sure. And I mean, it's $1,500, so I'm not going to turn my nose up at it, but I feel like this is the kind of show where you are in it for the experience of being on the show. Like, yeah, you want to win the $1 million at the end, but like I would be okay with being eliminated like halfway through on this show. That'd be a thing where it was like, man, I got to do some cool stuff.
Yeah, and then they sequester you anyway because they don't want to be this, because the show is so popular that obviously everybody knows in the world, like, oh, they're playing The Amazing Race. That a couple of things that I read is they obviously sequester the people who are eliminated, so you don't know. And I've also read that they've sent people, they've like given people like airplane tickets or fake envelopes or whatever, and had them run through airports just as like a decoy. So
Yikes.
so people don't know who's winning and losing at that time, or who's been eliminated.
Weird. Yeah, I guess it makes sense. And for it's kind of gone back and forth from what I understand about how the contestants are handled in between legs of the race.
Right.
Their time is their own, and they're allowed to spend it how they want. But the rule of intermingling with other teams has been shifted over the years. And I think the idea now is that typically they don't intermingle because specifically that they don't want them to know what order they're in, and people will be eliminated without other teams knowing. Like the next day they just won't be there,
Right.
and things like that, which makes sense. I think it would be a little frustrating if you were on the show having to be sort of locked down in that way, but it really does make sense for the drama of keeping it a secret and keeping everyone.
I think you're just kind of expecting that. Like that to me is just part of the, hey, we're signing up for this.
Right. That's true. That's true. So for these tasks, obviously you want to get through them as fast as possible. If you fail a task, you get a penalty, and it's typically 30 more minutes added to your time. And that's in addition to however long it took you to fail the task. So these are obviously they're there to slow you down, but there's a strategy of trying to figure out whether or not what's going to take you longer, right? Like if you have taken an hour to do something and you think it's going to take another hour, just quit and get that penalty, right? Like that seems to me
take the 30-minute penalty. Yeah,
right, because
absolutely.
you're then cutting your potential extra time in half or whatever.
A lot of the tasks, though, aren't like 2-hour tasks. You know what I mean? Some of them are,
Sure.
but I mean, very few of them are. You know what I'm saying? Because if that was the case, you'd just be like, in the very beginning, you're like, God, this is going to take us 2 hours. We're failing the task. We'll take the 30-minute, road.
Right.
walk.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, they are usually pretty, quick games, but it is meant to slow them down.
Sure.
And so I guess the idea is if that one team gets a detour or something and another team gets a yield, then the team that gets a yield is now ahead just simply because of the luck of the draw, right?
Right.
So basically this continues through each leg of the race with teams being eliminated. They don't always eliminate a team every round. I'm sure anyone who's seen reality shows will see those episodes where it's like a twist and nobody's eliminated. You all go on, whatever.
Or we're going to eliminate 2 teams this week.
Exactly. Typically, I think those have to go hand in hand, right? Like if you don't eliminate somebody 1 week, you're still on the same overall time clock of the show. So you got to eliminate 2 people later, right?
Yeah, and they shoot this thing in 21 days.
Yeah.
So like they literally do 12 episodes of filming in 21 days. And I was reading a lot of the behind the scenes. Like every single crew is given a satellite phone. The host is given a satellite phone. He's trying to get to the pit stop, and sometimes the teams have beaten him there.
Wow.
Due to weather delays on a plane
Sure.
or whatever. But typically the other thing is like normally what they do is when the teams get to a pit stop, immediately the host turns around and flies out immediately. Like so the teams will have 12 hours of rest.
Yeah.
And he's just moving
already
on to
booking
the
it to the
one.
next place. Yeah, that makes sense.
And Phil does a great job. We'll talk more about that next, but
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
really like him.
Yeah, he's great. So once there's 3 teams remaining, then it's the like sort of finals, and those 3 are competing in the last leg, and whoever gets to the end of the race first gets a cool $1 million.
It's interesting how you go from 1,500 to $1 million.
Right?
Now, I think I did read that second place gets like 25,000, third place gets like 10 grand. So I mean,
that's good to know.
That's still pretty good. But I mean,
significant,
dude, the trip of 21 days, and the other thing is the sad part is you don't really even get to enjoy any of the places that you're really going to because you're going to so many places so quickly.
Yeah. Well, and the thing is they are, and I have this mentioned in the history, but I might as well just bring it up now. The tasks that they're doing throughout the games are generally geared towards wherever they are, right? Like it's highlighting
Right.
cultural things, and it is a little bit, educational, I guess, a more immersive trip. And they also try to do things that like tourists aren't going to do, right? So if you go to London, you're not going to go, the task isn't going to be something at Big Ben, right? It's going to be something a little deeper than that, which I think is a pretty cool thing because it could, with the speed that they're going through all this, it's very easy to make it just like a, skip through everything and not pay attention to anything.
Right.
So the tasks, I think, do a good job of highlighting, interesting parts about where they are and making it a little bit more of a travel show along with being a competition show.
Yeah. And I think that's a big appeal of it too. And we'll talk more about the appeal when we get to the ratings. So,
Yep.
all right. Well, I mean, that's gameplay for you. Not terrible gameplay here.
I like the concept. If I were a, physically fit and rugged individual, this is a show I would love to be on. Also, if I wasn't terrified of flying. See, that's the problem. I would lose this show just because it'd be like, we gotta go to London. Where's the next boat? I'll be there in 3 months.
Do you not fly? I didn't know that.
I do, but I just hate it and avoid it wherever possible. And
We'll have to make it like B.A. Baracus from the A-Team. We'll just knock your ass out, and then you'll be able to fly.
So coming back, we went to on a European trip for our honeymoon, and coming back, we got routed through Toronto, YYZ Airport, and they had just set up this new system for routing checked bags through internet. We were just like a touch point. We weren't staying there. So routing checked bags through their international service to America. And it was just, I guess it was not worked out well. And it was like the first day or something. It just wasn't working. And our name sat on this board of waiting to be called and did not go over to the ready board for like hours, to the point where it's like our plane leaves in 5 minutes and we're still on this, can't pass through this part of the airport board
Thing, yeah.
So I'm already high stress and anxiety through the roof, and I'm freaking out. So I have this medication that my doctor gives me for when I fly, and I took 2 of those. Next thing I remember, I'm waking up on the plane, and I asked Crystal when the plane's taking off, and she's like, "Honey, we just landed." So I don't remember what that was, but it worked.
Wow, that's fantastic. Okay, good to know. So when we have to fly around the country to do our podcast live, this is what we're going to need to have.
Yeah, exactly.
Excellent. All right. I think we'll make it a road trip. How's that?
Oh, that sounds great. I'm into road trips for sure.
All right, good deal. All right, well, we'll take a break. When we come back, we'll talk about the history of our featured game this week, The Amazing Race.
You've been listening to America's favorite game show podcast. Tell them what they've won.
welcome back. Episode number 39, one away from our final. Segment number 3, the featured show is...
The Amazing Race.
40 is right around the corner, Mike.
40 is right around the corner, both for me, both in episode and age. Ooh.
Oh, well, congratulations. Welcome to the club here soon, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, I got a year left, but I'm close.
Yeah. Hey, that is close.
Yeah.
I keep making fun of my poor bride and telling her that she's 50, but she's not.
There's nothing women love more than jokes about being old.
Oh, yeah. It's doing really well for my relationship.
Yep, I bet it's a real winner. It goes over well every time.
Boy.
Like a lead balloon.
All right, so it's time for the history of The Amazing Race. So what do you have for us?
So it was created by a husband and wife team with perhaps the best pair of names I've run across, at least in this podcast. We have, and I don't know how to pronounce this last name, but Elise Dojanieri and Bertram Van Munster. I mean, I want to give that guy a prize for being
Are they
named.
both American?
And that's a good question, but man, I like Bertram Van Munster is one for the ages. What a name.
That's great.
So they've actually have a long and storied history in TV. Van Munster being a producer on Cops, which famously is like reality show before there was reality show, right? So there's a bit of clout behind this show. They apparently were mutually bored with the lack of good ideas on television and challenged themselves to do something better. You could say they succeeded or not, depending on your point of view. I would say it's at least a good idea, so they succeeded. They brought the concept to CBS, specifically Les Moonves, another fantastic name, by the way. Like, what a trio.
Yeah, it is great.
And, of course, they developed it into the show that we know today. The first season premiered on September 5th, 2001, hosted by Phil Keoghan. Is that correct?
I think it's Keegan. I don't know for sure, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, well, as evidenced, I did not get very far into the show to learn pronunciations of names, which we'll talk about in the ratings. But yeah, I don't know much about him. He's from New Zealand. He is a good host. He's likable. He's good with the contestants. Yeah. I think he does a fine job. As far as production goes, they have 2 crew members with each team. But like I mentioned in the gameplay, the teams are all doing their own legwork to get these, legs of the trip done. But they have 2 crew members with them. So like when they go to get plane tickets, they have to get 4 and then reshoot it and get a scene of them ordering 2 so that when they edit it, it looks like there's only 2 people there.
Yeah, what's crazy is that if there's only 2 seats left on the plane, they can't go.
I didn't even think about that.
They've got to have 4. There's no way for them to go.
Interesting. That has to have been a factor at some point on the show, right?
You don't. The truth is, you don't see that because I'm sure they're going to edit that out.
Yeah,
you know what I'm saying?
They're trying to get rid of any indication that the crew is there with them. Also, the crew has I think $200 in their pocket at any time for emergencies. And it is like literal emergencies.
Yeah, someone gets hurt, needs a taxi to the hospital.
Exactly. They will not interfere or intervene on the contestants' behalf or against them or anything like that. And that's sort of the thing with this show is they go through a lot of work to set this show up. They have representatives working for the show in each country, obviously, so that, like you said, the host is obviously going from place to place, as is a lot of the crew. But there are people stationed in each country who don't move, and they're there for, help and safety and all that. And they're, I don't know if they're necessarily citizens of that country, but they're at least people who are well versed in that country, so they can help in sort of political and diplomatic ways, things like that.
I read about at one point the host Phil was being detained, I want to say in Austria or something, because they didn't think his paperwork was fine, and the U.S. Embassy actually came to the rescue and got him to the pit stop before the first team arrived. Yeah,
and so there's also a team of legal experts for just that kind of stuff, because you got to make sure that you're dealing with international laws here, and for a television show in the long run, I would imagine, some international country being like, we don't care about your American game show. You guys broke our laws, right? So you got to make sure that everything is planned out. And there have been times when they've had to like make last minute changes and do relocations and stuff like that. Argentina, of course, when their bank system failed, that resulted in huge political upheaval. So they had to book it out of there and relocate. Egypt has now made their list of places they will not go, which is a bummer because I feel like pyramids and the Sphinx and all that kind of stuff could be such cool stuff for the show.
Yeah.
But it is on their no-go list. And then, of course, most recently with the coronavirus, they've stopped the season just midway through. They say temporarily. I guess the idea is that they're going to resume the current season, or they might just start over. I don't know. There's not really any information on that yet. But, yeah, that's, they got to keep things safe. As much as you want to make this a fun romp around the world, at the end of the day, diplomacy and safety reign supreme, and the producers do a very, very, very good job of making sure.
I can't imagine what it's like to be on the production team for this. I mean, this is a epic, like, you need a lot of coordination to make this thing happen.
Well, and not only do you need a lot of coordination, you need a lot of money. And it's interesting because they're giving away $1 million, obviously fairly big prizes to second and third, if that was to be, if that's correct. And, if the other players are getting $1,500 when they're eliminated, like that's not that's not an insignificant amount of money.
Right.
But the thing, and you're also sending 22 people plus crew around the world.
I read somewhere that the satellite phone bill in one country alone for one show was $25,000.
Yeah, and the scale of this show is so massive that the budget is through the roof, but it ends up being one of the least expensive reality shows to produce, and that's because they offset everything with product placement.
Right.
The tickets are provided by the airlines or, travel.com, so that they say you get on your travel.com seat in the airline, like they just throw every product everywhere they can.
Sure.
And,
and hence the reason why I think this show comes back hugely after coronavirus, because everybody and their brother is going to be traveling. So every travel company in the world is going to want to be sponsoring this.
For sure. And for some reason, not for some reason, I'm about to explain the reason. The product placement in this show doesn't really bother me or feel as egregious as it does a lot of times. And that's because I don't feel like it's trying to be sneaky with it. Like the whole Cherries Wild, branded with Pepsi, that feels fake, right? Like this is, we're flying, so let's get Delta to sponsor it. Or you've got to climb through a difficult terrain, so let's get Cliff Bars to sponsor it. Things like that make sense in the scheme of the show, and I guess show the product in the environment that it's meant for, right? Like nobody's going to be drinking Pepsi while playing slot machines on a giant slot machine, right?
Rigged slot machine.
Oh yeah. So it's a fine line, I guess, maybe at the end of the day, but I feel in this show, product placement is not only appropriate for offsetting the just enormous potential budget, but also because it just feels like it makes sense. And despite shutting down the 33rd season, that blew my mind. I did not know it was that.
Yeah, but it's like Survivor. They have multiple seasons in a year. Do you know what I'm saying?
Sure,
like,
but
it's not 33 years it's been going.
No, I understand that for sure. But even still, to be honest with you, when I first went into this, I didn't even know it was still on. That already surprised me. But yeah, it shut down season 33 for COVID. Like I said, they have quote unquote temporarily suspended it. But the show is theoretically alive and well, and it's due to return when it can. I assume they'll just resume season 33 where they left off. They called everybody back home and everything. They were in another country. So my guess is they'll probably just send them back to that country and then just be like, all right, we are now at our 4th pit stop, and just pretend like that whole thing never happened.
Exactly right.
Yeah. So yeah, still alive and well. And when I was talking to my wife about how I was surprised that it was on season 33, and she said she's not surprised at all because everybody in her family loves it. They make a note of watching it every week. And that's why I don't want to poo-poo this show, to segue into ratings, because unlike Survivor or any of these other reality shows, whether they're competition or not, I am not a fan of the reality show format. And with Survivor specifically, I feel like my rationale for it could come off as like snooty or elitist, right? Like, I don't think it's good television. I don't feel that way about this show. I think the competition is strong. I think they put the drama and reality show element into it because that's, a popular thing these days. But a lot of this is going so fast that there's not time for them to have these like scripted, let's have a big blow up like soap opera style fight, right? Like
right.
They really, really do focus on the gameplay, which I think is great. And they like to humanize it with the reality show aspect as opposed to almost dehumanize it. And by that I mean one of the teams I saw was a mother and daughter team, but the mother had given the daughter up for adoption, and they had met like twice before the show, and the idea was just that they were getting together to get to know each other during the course of this show. And so they were able to sort of focus that as a human interest story, which that kind of reality show stuff I'm fine with. I like that. What I don't like is the, I came here to win, not to make friends kind of stuff that they do on Survivor and all that stuff. And so, let's just go ahead and talk about ratings since we're here.
All right. So what are we going to do?
Pit stops.
Sure. I'm good with any kind of a race analogy.
Yeah.
You're fine.
Okay. Yeah, let's do the pit stops then.
Pit stops is good. Go ahead.
I am putting aside my personal opinions of both reality shows in general and my dislike for this show. A lot of my dislike for this show is in the way it's produced, in that it is way too frantic for me. It got my nerves up. It got my anxiety up. I did not enjoy watching it, but I very much realize that is my reaction to it, not a fault of the show itself. With that all in mind, I'm landing at like 2.75 for this show. Which again sounds low, but I want to remind everybody that's better than half. Right. It is a great game. The host is great. Everything about this show on paper and obviously in the hearts of millions of Americans, they're doing it right. It's just not for me, to the extent that like I did not even watch more than a half of an episode of this. I couldn't get through it. And I was almost relieved to find that it was because of the frenetic pace of it rather than the fact that it was a game show. So I wasn't like poo-pooing it and sticking my nose up at it. That's where I'm landed.
Cool. So I'm going a little bit higher. I'm going to go with 3. And I really think that out of all the reality competition shows that are out there, which, I'm starting to get more used to saying that now as opposed to like reality TV, because there is some reality competition that is here. This has the most competition, I think, out of most of them, in terms of like physical competition and mental competition and just the idea that, it is really a race, around the world. I love the travel aspect of it. I love to travel, so for me, it's always like enjoyable seeing these places, and I think that that's a certain romanticizing part of this. That to a lot of people, that wow, look, they're in Egypt today, and then tomorrow they're in France.
Well, they wouldn't be in Egypt, but I get your meaning.
You know what I'm saying. But the idea of being in, overnight, being in 2 different countries has a huge appeal to a lot of people.
Absolutely.
I think the older I get, the less I want to fly, because of the flying has just become such a hassle. It's not comfortable. It's just a pain in the butt.
Yeah.
But like when we went to Europe, I absolutely loved it because, everything in Europe is so close that when you bounce from, London to France to Amsterdam, as we did, those flights are like an hour. And I'm like, this is great. I can handle hour flights. We're good. It's the 6 hours to get over there or the 10 hours to get back that you're like, oh, God, this is awful.
Don't fly to Australia.
Yeah, have never been. I know you lived there for a period of time, but I would really like to go. I'm just going to make sure that when I do that, I take some stop offs at places.
Yeah. Well, because flying straight from LA to Sydney, I believe is like a time, like actual hours on the plane is like 17, but then
Right.
you cross over the international date line. So it ends up, I don't remember if it's going there or coming back, but one way it ends up being over 24 hours in calendar time.
Yeah, which is ridiculous.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's also interesting that going the other way is like you leave Thursday at 11:30 in the morning and then you get home at Thursday at 3:30 in the afternoon.
Right.
It's like I just spent 17 hours to go 5 hours.
Well, and for me, I don't care so much about the time change as I do the actual hours on the plane because the seats are just not comfortable.
Oh, I agree. Well, and I mean, I'm a white knuckle flyer, so imagine being white knuckle for 17 hours. Like I don't eat, I don't sleep. I just,
Sure.
it's awful.
Yeah. When I have had the opportunity to sit in business class or first class, which hasn't happened often in my life, it's a totally different experience for me.
Very true.
And
Very
I
true.
think I could handle it a lot better, which just tells me I need to make a lot more money so I can continue to fly in those upgraded classes.
Yeah, well, and I have done both on the Australia trip, and I can
Sure.
say it is absolutely worth the upgrade. Now, granted, I was not paying for the upgrades when I got them, so I don't know what they actually cost. But
Thanks, Mom and Dad.
yeah,
Well, anyway, so I love it. I love the travel aspect of it. In terms of what it is, it's not something I feel I could do in the physical shape that I am now, but it is something I certainly would love to do. And obviously, to me, there's a little bit of the Amazing Race in your party that you do, which is the Mario Party each and every year, Mike. And I think that is the part of Mario Party that I really like, is because you have that competition and yet we're doing these assigned tasks. It's very similar in that regard.
I agree. I hadn't really put that together, but you're definitely right, and I think that is maybe why I was so accepting of a show that I literally could not watch.
Right. So there it is. Three pit stops for me. And honestly, out of all of them, like I'm dreading like when we have to do Survivor or American Idol or some of these other reality competition shows. But this one I wasn't dreading, and when I saw it on our list of shows to do, I was like, I'm looking forward to doing this. And after doing it, I really feel like it was a good featured show this week.
I agree. It was a good featured show, and I went into it not being excited, and I left not being excited, but I changed the reason for which I was not excited so that I feel like I grew a little bit,
Well, and that's what this is all about for us. All right, Mike. Well, that's all the time we've got for today. Next week, the big 40th episode.
The big 40 over the hill. Does that mean we're going to
yeah, man.
die soon?
No, over the hill means you're only halfway there. We're fine.
Okay, fine. 1 foot in the grave. Thanks, Tom. Thank you, Christian. Thank you, Buzzer Blog. Thank you, everyone who writes in. Thank you, all our Stumper Chumpers.
Stumper Chumpers. I love Stumper Chumper. That is such a great name for that. All right, we'll tune in again next time. We'll bring you the latest and greatest in the world of game shows. We'll do a brand new featured show. It'll be the end of our season number 2. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, several featured shows. And remember, you can always catch us online, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and of course, tellthemwhatthey've.com.
Please subscribe, share, like, and drop a review, a good review, if you like what you heard.
And if you didn't like it, all right, you can blame me this week. My heart just wasn't in it.
See you next week, Mike.
Bye, Tom.
You've been listening to America's favorite game show podcast, Tell Them What They've Won, a JTech audio production, copyright 2021. No part of this podcast may be reproduced by anyone without the express written consent of the creators. For more information or to contact us, please go to tellthemwhatthey'vewon.com.
All right, Tom, what'd you learn this week?
So, Mike, pretty simply, I learned that I really miss traveling. Watching a couple of these shows, it just made me yearn to travel again. And obviously, because of COVID, we're not doing that. But I definitely know that I miss it. And this just brought back those memories.
I agree. As much as I hate the act of getting there, I love going to other places.
All right. How about you? What did you learn?
So I learned, I think the easiest way to explain this is that the quality of a show is not a indicator of my willingness to watch it. And what I mean by that is I stopped watching this show literally halfway through the first episode that I put on. It was unwatchable to me because of my reaction to it.
Sure.
I don't hate it. I hated Singled Out, and I watched like 7 episodes of that in a row. So
So that's so interesting. I'd love to have you in a focus group. You know what I'm saying?
right? Like, I don't know if that speaks to me or television or what, but yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, just like you. Weird.
Thanks.
Copyright 2021, a JTech audio production.